Hello Baku crew and welcome back to the channel. As you can all see, today I'm going to be trying something a little different and I'm going to be taking a look at a different game. That's right, for today's video I'm going to be sharing my Charix, the Raging Isle Commander deck. This is a deck for the Magic the Gathering Commander format. I did build it recently, online pretty much, and yeah, like I said in my previous videos, I'm going to be trying to diversify the content a bit on the channel and introduce other games. For those of you who have no idea what Magic the Gathering is, it's a card game that's been around since before I was born and probably since before you watching were born as well. So it's kind of one of the big three as far as trading card games go. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the game itself. If it's a game that you would be interested in playing, let me know in the comments down below. I might make a how-to video, but otherwise probably won't worry about that. More so just sharing my decks for the game, and I'll see what happens. Starting off with the deck, it does run 39 lands. Now, right off the bat, Brawlers, you're going to know what this is from the pro game of Bakugan. Lands are pretty much energy. The same kind of theory goes, you have to use your land to pay for all of the other spells in your deck. The only difference between this and the pro game is the lands are actually lands themselves, and you can't use any card as energy. But that's only the main difference. Otherwise, it's the same. You have cost. You have to pay the cost to play your cards. So the land, or mana base, as it's called, is 33 islands. This is a blue deck. It's mono blue, so no other colors. You're going to need all of these cards to play the cards in the deck that actually do something. Otherwise, I have these three. All these do is basically search out these. Obviously, Magic players are going to know. These are like staple searches, but that's all it is. These tutor these lands, and yeah, that is the mana base. Again, I don't want to overcomplicate things, so I just want to go through the deck profile. And I don't want things to be too long. But yeah, a ruling video I might make a how-to video if everyone is interested. But anyway, with Commander, the whole premise of the format is your 100 card deck. It is singleton, so you can only have one copy of each individual card. Is all based around a central creature. Now this could be different. There are some other cards that can be your commander, but I won't get into that. For the, I guess, main focus of this deck, it was Charix, the Raging Isle. Already said that, sorry, but it is a crab tribal deck, which means the entire deck is centered around crab creatures, and this one right here. So basically it makes your spells an opponent casts that target it cost 2 more. That's really good for protection. 0 power, 17 toughness. That's pretty much like attack and defense for Yu-Gi-Oh players or Vanguard players. But very strong wall. It's a crab leviathan. And then you can pay 3 to give it plus X, minus X until end of turn, where X is the number of islands you control. So it's a way to manipulate the power and kind of make it bigger attack-wise rather than defense-wise, which it starts out as with 17. Kind of odd for a creature. It's unheard of. I don't think there's many that have that much toughness. But yeah, it's really an interesting deck concept. The idea is to just sit behind a wall of crabs and then buff him up till he's big enough, and then you swing once, like you make him unblockable, and then you win with commander damage, which... Another ruling note, and I said I wouldn't get into this, but I kind of have to explain the premise of the deck. You start out with 40 life, but the damage that your commander deals is called commander damage, and you can only take 21 of that. So even though you have 40 life, if you take a specific number of damage from the commander, you automatically lose the game. So now you can kind of see how this deck functions. You wall up, you get your crab big enough to kill someone in one swing, you manipulate the battle to where you make that creature unblockable, and you win. That's pretty much how the deck works in theory. In play testing, I have had luck, and that's all you do. So since this is a crab tribal, I will go ahead and go through the crabs. Now I don't want to really explain what every card does. I'll touch on them briefly, but mainly just enjoy the artwork and kind of get an idea of the game. So Hedron Crab, one of our lowest cost cards at only 1 blue. When a land enters the battlefield, you basically make an opponent mill, which is the same thing as making an opponent like take damage in Bakugan. You mill the cards off the top of the deck and they put them right into the graveyard. So pretty neat. Ruin Crab, it does basically the same thing, minor differences, but a 1-cost crab, always good in a tribal build. Canyon Crab. Iceberg Cancrix, which it is a crab, but unfortunately I have no other snow cards in this deck, so it doesn't trigger. The whole point is it's a 2-cost for 0/4, so a really good blocker, and that is the deck. It's just nothing but crabs. Purple Crystal Crab. Ancient Crab, like I said, lots of crabs. We have the Horseshoe Crab. For Magic players watching, I did not include the infinite combo with this thing. I'm not a fan of infinite combos because going infinite in a card game's not really any fun, especially in a commander format, right? A game that's based on multiple players, not just 2, but usually 4. So, yeah, no fun. Then I have the Jawari Scuttler, Skittering Crustacean, and a warning, I am probably going to mispronounce 99% of these cards. I apologize. This is the Crustacean. It's like a crystal. The Fortress Crab. Thassa's Emissary with some dogs barking in the background. I apologize for that. Wishcoin Crab. Again, another 2/5. A good thing to note, though, is most crab creatures have like very little power. Their strength really goes into their toughness. They're great blockers. They're like 0/4s, 2/5s, 2/5, 0/6s, that kind of thing. Armored Cancrix. So that's why I say you wall up with the crabs, because this isn't really an offensive deck. You're not attacking a lot with it. You're just setting up a bunch of creatures to block your opponents. There was a giant crab, and then I have the High Tide Hermit. Dreadlight Monstrosity. Unfortunately, crabs don't have a lot of synergy, as you can all see. They do a lot of random stuff. None of it's really, I guess, synergistic, other than, of course, them all being crabs. So that is a downside to this deck for being a tribal one. Mirror Shell. And then I have the Eldrazi Crabs, Vexing Scuttler, and Drownyard Behemoth. That is the downside to crabs. They're not really all based on the same strategy or theme like elves or goblins, and they all do different stuff. I do have some non-crab creatures in the deck. These are just really good for the overall strategy. So Merfolk, whatever, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, can switch a target creature's power and toughness. So the idea, you activate the ability to give it +X, -X. Let's say you have 3 islands on the field. So that would mean you have 3 power, 14 toughness. You use this Merfolk and it switches that. So you then have a crab with 14 power and 3 toughness. And then I usually have a way to make it unblockable. And that is the main strategy of the deck. Speaking of making a creature unblockable, Thassa is one of the ways I have to do that, because you can pay 1 generic, so 1 of anything and then 1 blue, and then target creature I control can't be blocked. So really powerful, and that is an auto include. And then Wonder is a creature that basically you want it in the graveyard, because whenever it's in the graveyard and you have an island on the field, all of your creatures have flying, so that's like an evasive ability in Magic. To where creatures with only flying or reach can block flying. So it's a way to like get over if an opponent has a ton of 1/1s or something, like goblins per se. That's so you can fly right over them and deal in the damage. 1 Planeswalker card. This really is just for like cycling through the deck. It gives me a little advantage because it makes my opponent's creatures get a -1, -0 when they attack. Otherwise, I just kind of added it in here because it's one of my favorite cards. And one of the first cards I ever pulled. But yeah, Planeswalkers, I don't want to even get into that iceberg. It's just a different type of card, pretty much. And then for other types, you have artifacts, enchantments, enchantment auras that enchant creatures. Obviously, you have creatures and land. So it sounds like a lot, but if you had someone better explaining it, Magic is really simple. It just seems like a lot at first. So for the auras that I enchant my creatures with, it is Crab Umbra, Aether Tunnel, which pretty much makes a creature, it can't be blocked, so synergy. Call to the Kindred, it gets out creatures of the same type. And then Scuttletide makes crab tokens. That is pretty good as well. As Levitation, sorry, don't know why I spaced on that one. But it gives my creatures flying as well, so just like Wonder pretty much. And these are enchantments, so they stay on the field. Very nice. And then now most blue decks, it's kind of a general theme in Magic that most blue counters, you have things that counter spells, much like Blinding Ink in Bakugan, and then Triple Blast Cannon, I think. How they negate action cards, well, blue as a color in general negates spells that you want to play. Now, even though I do have a few of those cards in this deck, one thing I thought would be neat was to try something else, and then I have these enchantments that actually turn my opponent's creatures into very small ones that aren't a threat against my crabs. So for instance, Witness Protection will make any creature a 1/1. Eaten by Piranhas makes it a 1/1 as well. So does Frogify, and then Ichthymorphosis makes it a 0/1. So different instances, different uses, but anyway, these are cards that are just sort of removal, or you can think of as removal. And then some mana rocks. So artifacts in this deck are ways of getting mana. There are ways to get mana beside land. So Arcane Signet, you pay 2. Right here in the corner is the cost, much like Bakugan cards. Same kind of template. For those of you who are curious, you have the cost in the corner, you have what the card is, and then you have the effect of the card. So honestly, kind of exactly like Bakugan in a way, and I guess that makes it more relatable and understandable. But yeah, this just adds more mana, this adds more mana, and that adds more mana. So just really good generic mana rocks that are staples in Commander, if you will. And then Binding of Thassa, just a little utility artifact, lets me draw cards in the right scenario, and then I can force my opponent's creatures to attack, not necessarily me, but I can force them to attack, and in which case they won't be able to block on the following turn. Excuse me. Getting into the last two types of cards into the deck, these are instances and sorceries, which I guess they would be action cards in the Bakugan Pro TCG. These are just cards that you can pay throughout your turn at different steps, depending on what they do. So the whole theme of the deck is make Charix huge and then make it unblockable. So these spells make it unblockable. This one again makes a crab token. Returns opponent's cards, all cards really. Draws a card for each crab. So it's important to have draw power in any deck, especially in a game where your deck is not your life. And that is refreshing, whereas Bakugan kind of a little frustrating in that department. Whelming Wave, so a bounce spell. So just good removal that doesn't really counter my opponent's spells, but it does get rid of them, and then cards to draw. I would say this deck is probably 40% draw power, 30% ramp, and then 30% crabs. That's pretty much it. And then for instances, it's kind of the same thing. You're going to protect your crabs, draw some cards, so Opt, Shell Shield, Shore Up, Twisted Image, Essence Scatter, one of the few counter spells I have in the deck. Keep Safe, Negate, Thirst for Discovery, Aetherize, Engulf the Shore, Ensnare, Flow of Knowledge, and Pull from Tomorrow. So for any Magic players watching, you already know this is a very generic deck. It's not very strong by any means. If I were to be honest, I would say this is definitely an entry-level deck, and this is one that I would play with, say, people on the Discord server of my channel to teach them the game and kind of show them the ins and outs of Commander. But yeah, hopefully I didn't slaughter that deck profile too bad. This is my first time trying to show off a commander deck and kind of talk about Magic the Gathering. Definitely not the lane I'm used to, but hey, it's in the name of diversity, right? And playing games should be just what the channel's all about. It is a gaming channel after all. So I hope you enjoyed watching. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing. And if anything, you did enjoy pretty card artwork. But yeah, I will go ahead and see you in the next video.